flesh it
was the
out.
whole thing about the Yankee at large count that we just had was something that I'm going to ask you for direction on that today because of
Okay.
confusion about it.
Okay. The Friday State Board meeting for November will come to order. We will stand and say the, okay, sorry. We'll stand and say the pledge. Okay, before we adjourned yesterday, we moved a couple of, or moved the further discussion of item 13 on regarding different parts of the reconstitution for Little Rock School District to today. And I don't know, is Mr. Peckron on the line? Do we know yet? I was going to have him talk a little bit more about some of the comments he made regarding the MOU, but since he's not here, we can wait and talk with him about that during a work session. The other thing was Ms. McFetridge had brought up about the PPC, and so we will if you're ready to talk about that, Ms. McFetridge? The PPC? Okay.
Yes, I just wanted to share my feelings on having a teacher represented at each building level for the PPC. I really feel like to have one person specifically in each building with a voice to be able to come back to the district in a PPC meeting and share their feelings would be very important to do that.
Okay.
To have one member per building.
And you had that experience at the district where you were on the local board?
I did, and it worked very well in our district.
And it was a large district?
Yes, the largest district in the state, honestly. And there are 30 buildings in Springdale, and each building had a representative, and it worked very well. And I feel like the teachers felt like every building had a voice. You know, every building's a little different. Every building has a different culture. And I felt like they felt like they were represented.
Okay, so
Every
it would
building.
be like, we were talking about the uniqueness of community school is per building, because teachers don't always know people in other buildings.
Right. Well, and the district's large, and it's spread over a pretty large area. So it really did work very well. They met monthly, and were able to bring back, the teacher at that representative meeting was able to bring back ideas and thoughts back to their buildings, and then when their teacher meetings at the local building level met, they were able to share with the rest of the staff. The staff could then share their opinion with this one member, and that member could go back to the full committee and share that.
Okay. Okay. Did that take place initially in the when you were talking about the bylaws for the PPC, and y'all have a very active teachers association there too, don't you?
We do, and it worked very well. Both groups worked very well together. The PPC always shared their minutes with the local school board, and the local school board always had the SCA represented at our school board meetings, so they would report every meeting at our school board meeting. They'd give us a report on what was happening in Springdale with the teachers. So the SCA always had a piece on the agenda on the Springdale School Board, and it worked very well. People felt like they had a voice continually. So
I have a question. I don't quite know how.
Who is this?
Being on the phone.
Who is that? Can you
This is
identify
Stacey
yourself?
McAdoo. Yeah, this is Stacey McAdoo.
Oh, Ms. McAdoo, okay. Thank you
Yes.
for calling in. Yes, please.
My question is, as it stands right now, the Little Rock School District, we have building reps already at every school. So what will become of the building reps that are not necessarily connected with LREA? They are physically the building reps at every school right now that do what you're saying for the PPC. So with those, what is your plan or your vision for the people that are already in place as building reps?
So you're saying there are building reps that are union and non-union members?
Each building we have BBC. Well, they changed it to CIC, I believe now. But yes, every building has representatives that they go to or can give suggestions, concerns that our principals then respond to, and we have minutes and all of that right now.
I think that would be a building and a superintendent working with you all and the CAB to come up with, does that person just put their name in the hat to be elected the building rep for the PPC, or is that a building rep that reports and works with LREA? So I don't think that's something that the state board, I think that would go into the local control ideas, not the state board ideas.
Okay, so, and you just said, put their name in the hat. We've already had nominations for PPC.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble understanding you. Can you say that again, please?
To be on the PPC. And I'm saying we've already had the nomination. Like you guys set a date for the nominations for the PPC. So that part has expired, correct?
Right. We did not set that date. We were not aware that a date had been set.
Yes. When last month, when we met and there was a date that was given where the elections had to be held for the new PPC, a date was set, and you guys said that you were going to use an external organization to do the voting and all of that. So that stuff has been in motion and rolled out to the district, and names have been submitted.
I think my recall is that Ms. McFetridge mentioned at that time one per building. We were not aware that didn't go forward, and when we became aware, that's why it is being brought up again at this meeting.
I would echo that as well. I also stated that in the last meeting, and I thought that could be the plan moving forward, and since it wasn't, that is why I would support the motion to make this decision at this point in time. I think, one, the diversity of the district being so large, this will help with communication in every school, and also the sheer amount of work that needs to go into the PPC at this point in time. Having building representation will help with the work and the culture of that work with the personnel policy handbook that needs to be created to move forward. I would have made the motion last month. Kathy probably would have too, if I knew it wasn't going to be that. I did watch the CAB meeting where this was discussed, and multiple members talked about having either a building rep or clusters by city, but I think it's unfair to have a small number in such a large district. Those 8 people could not get to every school to communicate with all teachers. Therefore, having someone in every school is of vital importance.
And I would think if the district does decide to have community schools, that would serve, those members could also serve as a conduit to bring back ideas. Here's what we're doing in my school, and You know, the more people that get involved in the community school, it would seem to me, if they decide to have them, the more benefit to children.
Yeah, and I certainly know there are challenges to having a larger number of people, but I think you can be strategic with subcommittees and different things so that you don't, you know, and communication via electronic and other ways to make it run smoothly, just as you would with a smaller number of people. But I think at the onset right now, this 40 is important. They will create the bylaws for what that looks like, and then moving forward in the future, if that needs to be smaller, it can, but I think at the onset right now, it's really important to have building representation.
Okay, any comments over here? Commissioner, Secretary, sorry.
I just wanted to be made clear that the information was on the board agenda in the October meeting. There was the draft of the PPC proposal dated October 2nd, 2019. It's still linked there now. And in that, it says the PPC will have 8 certified members, 3 administrator members. So that information was available. It did get discussed. It did get discussed in the Community Advisory Board. However, there was no vote taken to send a recommendation to me from the Community Advisory Board. There were discussions. I think there were 4 members present that day, but there were no votes taken to say we're recommending this to have one from each building. As such, and conversation that we had internally at the department with people whom I trust that have experience outside of in other school districts, said that an 8 and 3 member PPC would be appropriate and would be workable. So I know a lot of conversations have taken place since then. I just want to make sure that I'm on record with you all as to where I am on this. I know Mr. Poore told me that today we would have information, and I don't know if he has that yet, but that probably would be appropriate for him to share if he has information about the nominations, but that's up to y'all if y'all want to hear that.
Well, we were going to take public comment at the end, but if you're asking him to come, then that would be a point of privilege for you.
I think it would be, if that's the case, then I would ask him to come and share the information that he has.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good morning. I'm Mike Poore, Superintendent of Little Rock School District. We did move forward with a recommendation and submitted our proposal to the Commissioner for approval, which outlined exactly what was stated with a 8-person PPC. The action has already then put in motion, and so we have had the nomination round already completed by the company. Remember that the company does that totally independently and then works within the teacher group to get nominations. Currently, we have a slate of, it's somewhere between 250 to 300 applicants for being a part of that PPC. And it is scheduled, by the way we've set up this contract, that at 11 o'clock today, those names get released to be then shared as the folks that are wanting to run for the PPC. Eventually then, that comes to a vote where we would have all those members in place by the middle of December. There are 82 classified employees that have also applied to be a part of the PPC. So the amount of interest in this has been very positive in terms of people stepping up to say that they'd like to participate. We also know that if we go and amend the contract right now, you also are looking at an additional expense, and you also are looking at the reality that we will not have a PPC in place to start in January, because we would have to go back and start the process all over again with the company and re-engage to do the elections in a whole different way, which we'll pay whatever we paid for services up to this point, and then would have to negotiate a whole new contract to be put in place for a different type of setup.
The timeline actually is for the end of the 5 years is January 28th, so there would be time.
Well, what we had talked
from our point of view.
Yeah, but what we talked about in the presentations and the discussion prior to, I think, was that we'd always intended to try to have a PPC in place by January. That's how I remember our conversation in this room.
Well, I mean, I certainly respect your opinion, and I don't want to be contrarian to you, but it seems like if there are 250 nominations, potentially there's already a nomination from every school. If you open up the nominations for a few more days, maybe Monday at 11 o'clock or Tuesday, make sure there has been nominations per school and move forward, only pushing it back a couple days. Again, not to speak against it, but if I would have thought through it, and maybe it was my ignorance, but I would have made the motion last month if I knew it took a motion to change that. So I apologize to not doing that, but it sounds like potentially we could make it work. And that 250 number is so encouraging that those teachers want to be involved. Why not take a few extra days to make sure we have a clear line of communication to every teacher in the district?
With all due respect, this is Stacey McAdoo again. This is what the community was just talking about how it feels like the rules and the goalpost keeps moving. The district moved forward based on last month's agenda, based on what happened. And so if you do this, if you vote or motion or go to change this again, this is further evidence of the distrust that the community has with this board.
If I could, Ms. Moore, could I comment on one of the things that you shared? I think that it would cause, I don't think it may be as simple. I mean, we could look at it, but it may be more complex than just saying we're gonna open it up for 5 days, because you kind of, one of the things that the company takes pride in terms of operating as a third independent party is to, provide the information to say, here's the structure, here's the process. And so my guess is that they would say, to be fair, that you'd have to open the whole thing up again, go through the entire process all over again, which, and then again, to redraw the contract probably.
Superintendent, do you feel that with the current structure that you have full representation for the whole district in what you started working with?
Well, as stated, I'm encouraged by the number of people that are seeking to participate.
I'm saying the numbers, that the 8 and the way it is now versus going to have representation from every building. Do you feel like you will get full representation with that smaller number?
I do. I think it's a really good starting point. And so, as the commissioner said, there were conversations both within the Little Rock School District and then with the department to feel like that was the best recommendation.
I think again, want to focus the communication aspect of it and the input. If there's 8 teachers and, 2 elementary schools, but we have elementary schools miles apart, you might email that person, but having a face in your building to talk to about these issues, whether that be, I think that is powerful. And I think you can still get representation, but the communication aspect is sort of my perspective for how do we do that. And like I said before, the amount of work that needs to go into it and those decisions, being able to communicate to someone in your building is so important.
Do I have a motion? Okay, sure.
No. How were, as you're working with your, to put this together, was everybody encouraged by the process which you were dealing with to this point?
I've not had one negative email, one negative phone call from any staff person about the setup in the district right now. And so the process, which I was a little apprehensive about because this is new for us to go this route, have not had one concern that's been brought to me from teacher, administrator, classified employees about the process or asking, why couldn't we have gone to a bigger group? So within the Little Rock district, at least communication to me directly, I have not received anything.
Have we received anything?
I have. I don't know if any others have or not.
I have as well, and again, I think the number of 250 is so encouraging that, again, for that direct line of communication, why not open it up more? I can't see people arguing against that when you have that many people interested in serving.
Ms. Dean?
If we were to move forward with the 8 and what is the 3?
administrators.
Administrators.
Yeah, the three administrators are appointed by Mr. Poor,
Okay.
and then the 8, it breaks down as 3 elementary, 2 middle school, and 2 high school members.
Okay.
Plus
And-
one at-large kind of person, like a speech therapist or occupational therapist.
Okay. If for some reason, there is an issue or there's complaints or it doesn't seem to be working well, what are the options after that? Like, when is the re-up or, you understand what I'm saying? When is there an opportunity to make some adjustments or tweaks if there's a need that arises?
It's my understanding and my belief, and I've talked to Fort Smith in terms of how they've executed it, and actually have talked to Fort Smith about having them come in and just share a little bit of how they move forward on their model and what are some of the kind of priorities that they took in terms of development of their PPC, because they're the ones that most closely resemble us in terms of having to make the transition into this model. And so to directly answer your question is that that group would develop then what are those next things in terms of saying we want to have this to be a larger scale. They would develop that during the course of the spring in terms of developing their own bylaws.
Okay.
And just for me to jump in there, since every school already has building reps, then those building reps could talk to the people that you're referring to, the ones that are appointed to, or not appointed, elected, or however the process is. The building reps that are currently in place could go directly to the PPC people with the issues and concerns from their buildings.
And if I could, I'll just compliment a little bit of that, is that is probably a little bit of a unique model in terms of what I've seen in the Little Rock School District compared to previous districts, is that every school typically has some sort of leadership team, but there also is that made up of department heads and the principal. But in Little Rock, they also have another form of organization that allows teachers to, and they call it CIC, to be able to kind of look at all sorts of things that are a little bit more global. And so there is that component that is in place in the district.
I guess my question would be, why are those of you who only want 8 pushing so hard not to have a voice from a person in every building?
My personal thing is when you look at just governance and trying to move forward in terms of the work that is going to have to be done to develop the bylaws, to develop the bylaws, salary conversations, policy, that I think this is a good group to start off with in terms of a representative form of government. If you look at it in terms of a representative form of government, you know, you see that in all sorts of different layers and fashions within any setting, state level, community levels, that you rely on, you know, representatives that then go out and reach towards their constituents. So, and that there is the vehicle then to tie in towards those building level groups too.
Well, and if I understood, Ms. McAdoo, there is representation from that.
Yes.
Is that correct?
But is that
Not-
voted
not a
on by every
PPC
teacher in the
Yes.
school? So
Yes.
every teacher,
Yes,
no matter?
every teacher has the opportunity to vote on who's on the CIC. And as Mr. Porter just mentioned, even in addition to the CIC, we have the campus leadership team that consists of classroom teachers and department heads, counselors, everybody. So part of the frustration when you ask why are people continuously pushing back, it's truly because we are in this community, we are in this district, and we see it, we know how it's working. I don't know who these people are that are contacting you all, but there are thousands of other people who may not be contacting you, so I don't know. I don't know, but I know that every teacher has an opportunity to have their voice heard in the Little Rock School District.
In the current
And
system.
I think if that's working, then let's do it for the PPC. I mean,
Ms. Hook, can I make some comments? As a teacher, I can see both sides of this. You know, I can see where representation from a building would be good. I can also see having a smaller group to work through these initial bylaws and decisions that are gonna have to be made would be probably easier with a smaller group. I guess my thoughts right now, if we had done this last month and decided to have one person in each building then, before the process had started, I would have been more likely to go along with it now, because I like the idea of one person in each building. But since we've already got the process started and teachers are already coming on board, and to me, sounds like they're excited about the Personnel Policy Committee, I think to make a change now would just, if we can get them excited about anything, that's great. And I don't want to destroy that excitement that they have about being a part of the Personnel Policy Committee and being a member of that. So, you know, I think the timing issue is what my problem is with it right now. So.
Do you have a preference?
My recommendation would stand still with 8.
I think in my conversation with the superintendent in Bentonville and the superintendent in Springdale, they were both saying that it worked well for communication purposes, and they also have the different things that y'all are talking about. I know Springdale has 34 on their committee, and I forgot to ask Dr. Jones how many they have. But anyway, they really encouraged me, is the reason that I'm leaning toward that, because it is working. Those districts are doing well for their children, you know, and that influenced me, both of them, because I know them very, very well, and I trust their opinion just like I trust yours. But they said that there was no issue having a larger group and setting up the bylaws, and then every year when they, or every time they do it, they, you know, do you want to do this? Do you want to change? Those kind of things. So, and no change will be made. Dr. Moore?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the handout that was given to us last month, and again, I would have made the motion then, if not for my ignorance, but it says that the final ballot should be on November 5th. So that timeline has changed, which I understand. Things happen and you need longer. I'd rather take longer and do it well than do it in a hurry. But what we approved here is not what's being done. So we could, that leads me to believe that we can still change it and push it back a week.
I believe that the ballot was just the initial thing to allow people to go out and share their interest. And so then from that point on, we've then had to receive all the names that came in to say they want to be on the ballot. And so there may be a language thing.
Yeah, it may be a week, which again,
And
that's
so then-
not anyone's fault. I just think that if we have pushed it back a week, why not take one more week to do it well,
Well,
to get
I'm saying
that?
it didn't get pushed back.
It didn't?
No,
Okay.
I'm saying that on November 5th, that's when everything went out to our teachers to say it's now open in terms of people being able to say they want to be a part of it. Once they all came in, we had to go through a filtering process, because some people, when they put their name in, it didn't match up then within the what we have in the e-finance, because they put their name in, and it may be their nickname, Nick, but their real name on the books is Nicholas, and so we had to go match all those things up. We had to match up to make sure that every single person that was nominated was in fact a teacher. And so we had to do a lot of filtering out, which got us to the point of being at today, where we're ready to go roll out the actual nominees, and we are on track. We had to, we really wanted to have everything, the company wanted to have this yesterday, but I pushed them back to say we're gonna deliver it today, because we were so busy with everything that was taking place the last 2 days. So we were on a scramble mode, but they are able to execute their next timeline, which is to release all the nominees. So we're still on track with the timeline set by the contract.
Okay, and I'm not speaking poorly of them or of you all. I just saw the November 7th date, and so I said, well, if we push it back a month, again, I'm in the camp of do it well, and if it takes a little bit longer, to have that communication.
I
I
just
think
wanted to
the
make sure
thing-
you understood that we
Yes.
have met the target so far
Okay.
up to this point.
Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
sorry.
I think that's all.
Okay.
I think what prompted the calls that started coming into me was when LREA sent out their list of people that they wanted their members to vote for, and there were no people on the list that were not members of LREA. And then I got calls last night from people that saying, we're the people who showed up for work today. We were the ones who had to cross the picket line, and we're not going to have a chance because the members of LREA outnumber those who are not, which is, you know, that's a choice everybody makes. So I'm just bringing to you the things that the community is saying to me. They are reluctant to come here, and they're reluctant to share their names because people attack them on social media, and I appreciate and understand that. But as a teacher for this many years, and as a teacher, a lot of these people are people that either work for me or they are the students or the kids of the people who work for me. So that's why my name and my phone number and all of that is out there, and why they can call me. I also get calls from people who are members of LREA, and they have different opinions, and I keep their name out of the public eye as well. But I do value everybody who wants to express their opinion, and if they want to, as we say, let's reason together, I can give them my point of view, they give me their point of view. Sometimes we hang up and or agree, and sometimes we hang up and don't. But I wanted to bring this to the board, and I agree with you about not letting a timeline or not letting a misunderstanding by this board get in the way of letting all the teachers in the Little Rock School District understand we value all opinions, not just LREA, not just non-LREA, not just beginning teacher or experienced teacher. So,
And what I have done, I pulled the district email. This went out to everybody in the district on multiple occasions. This particular one right here is dated October 28th, and we as a district received numerous reminders to nominate people that we wanted to be on this committee, that it did not go to one group of individuals, it went to the entire district. And when you make the comment about LREA sending out a slate, that's fine. No one can dictate who people vote for. Just because LREA may have said that this is who we want you to vote for, doesn't even mean that I personally nominated the people on that list.
Right.
So this is what disenfranchisement looks like, when you don't trust the people to make the decisions or to make their own choices, that it was given to us. So whoever did not nominate anybody, whoever has chosen to not be a part of this system, they made that choice.
I would just add in mind, I don't see this as a union versus non-union
Well,
issue.
I
This
do.
is, if I'm a first or second year teacher in the district, I don't know if I'm gonna feel comfortable picking up and calling someone across town in a different school, in a different environment, to tell them my opinion on a certain personnel policy. But if it's someone that I see every day and I work with and I have that culture with, I will.
And I'm saying
that's where
you have that
but
person
not
has that.
on the PPC, and I think that's why for me it's important. It's not I don't know the 250 people. The 250 people speaks volumes that lots of people want to be involved. So let's let lots of people involved. So it's not a.
Lots of people want to run for different offices in the government, but we restrict that to a certain number. There are lots of people who would have wanted to be on this board, but there was a certain number set for them.
okay, I have a message here that Mr. Peckron wants to call in as soon as his flight is on the ground, so we can wait for, Ms. Chambers, are you on the line?
I am,
Okay.
Madam
Do you-
Chair. Could I make just
do you
a
want to
comment
weigh in?
Represent my own point of view?
I'm sorry?
If I could make just a comment or two?
Please, yes,
So I think an awful lot of this good discussion this morning has been about process and what we thought, maybe as a board, as a group, we had discussed in a previous meeting. And I think that's important. But I'd like to kind of hearken back to Mr. Peckron and some of the comments yesterday that really start to get at our behavior as it relates to moving towards local control for the district. And I think it's really important how the district feels about this, and if Superintendent Poore feels confident that this is the right thing to do, not the most expedient thing to do. I didn't hear him say that he was moving forward because he was on a timeline. I thought he was moving forward because he thought this was the right thing for Little Rock. If I got that wrong, I'd like to hear him correct me. But I think this is part of what we need to look in the mirror maybe as a board. How can we continue to hold on a few things? I'll use Chad's word, guardrails. There are a few things that I think are very important, that we're clear, that we're explicit, that we hold to, that have to do with outcomes and what has to happen at the end of the day, the what. But I think it's really important that increasingly Little Rock determines how they go about it. And sometimes with our good intentions of thinking through things, the public has misconstrued that to believe that we're dictating or that we're telling them how to do something that really the district, the community should own. And I think we just have to be careful. We can be well-intentioned and wrong in sometimes overstepping, but at the end of the day has to continue to be an increasing set of responsibilities that the district takes for itself and how it moves forward. And so my own point of view on this, unless Superintendent Poore corrects me, is that if this is what the district thinks is right, this is what we should allow the district to do. They can change going forward if they feel like the representation is inadequate. Anyway, that's my thought on this point.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the reason the state board is discussing this is because it was the state board that said that we wanted a PPC because of Act 728 that was passed in the 2019 legislative session. And my purpose of checking with districts that already were using a PPC, and in particular in Springdale where they have an active teachers organization union as well as a PPC, is to get the best approach for someone who had been using this in a district that is equal size to the district in which we are working. So I think the PPC came from us, and that's why we're discussing the steps that we want to do to get as much input from as many different teachers as possible. So I guess we will wait for Mr. Pecron to phone in, and I don't know if he'll have further discussion or not.
If I may, Madam Chair,
Sure.
while we're waiting for Mr. Pecron to call in, just want to point to another element that I think is informative here with Pulaski County Special School District. The issue with a local union is not new. Back in 2011, I believe it was, when the pact and pass were no longer the negotiating entity in Pulaski County. They established a PPC as well, and when we're talking about comparing, their PPC has 8 members now, and that looks like it includes the administrators. And their policy actually says their PPC will consist of at least 5 and no more than 14. Off the top of my head, I don't know how many buildings they have, but it's more than 8. But and one of those members is Brenda Robinson, one of them is Pan Fitzgibbon. I worked with this PPC and with Dr. Guess, and I will tell you that it was not without some headbutting because the PPC didn't always like what Dr. Guess did, and Dr. Guess didn't always like what the PPC did. But I think that's kind of the nature of how that process works. But looking back on that process, we did move forward with some things, the policy recommendations, and it was very balanced. So that is the personal experience that I've had in my time here as commissioner in working with a state takeover situation and a PPC, and then as that has transitioned after a few years following return to local control, you know, that is their current PPC now with 8 members. So I just present that to you as a set of facts and a set of personal experience to inform a conversation.
And I know Mr. Ackland, or is it Doctor or Mr. Ackland? Mr. Ackland told me yesterday they had worked for a few years with just a few people on their PPC, and it just wasn't working at all, and he was going to expand that. So, you know, circumstances alter cases. I think that's what it is. So we will await Mr. Pecron coming. The other thing that we were going to talk about this morning was the cab, and I didn't know if we wanted to wait and work on that on at a work session, or whether we want to move on that today. I think there's difference of opinion about that, and since so it is not as time sensitive as the PPC was, so we can easily wait till a work session and the December meeting if that is the pleasure of this board.
Madam Chair, I'd like to wait on the CAB and also the MOU until we can have a work session to discuss those issues.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Newton, second by Ms. Dean. All in favor?
Can I ask a question?
Dr. Moore?
So where does that leave the district? On the
Well, they
PPC?
have a cab.
Oh,
Okay.
so we're waiting on the cab, not on the
Yeah,
PPC?
so, no, well,
Okay.
they have a cab, and they have an opening right now, so I guess
So-
they'll look for somebody in that zone for sure. The question was gonna be whether we
Add the 2.
agreed to expand it to 2 more members to make it 9 like it will be after the local election, or whether not to. And I thought it was time
So this will
sensitive,
change
but
nothing,
apparently
and
it's not time
We'll have
sensitive.
we can have more
Yes.
conversation about it and then make any future
That
decisions.
way
Okay, that's
all of
fine.
our members can be here in person to discuss, because it's hard to discuss when we've got people that are having to call in.
That's true, that's true. So,
Yeah, if I may too, Madam Chair, there was some confusion yesterday over that issue because there was concern about those 2 members being at large, and I know that's a very sensitive topic. By necessity, they would have to be at large because there are only 7.
Take a moment to make sure you have everything with you before the aircraft or security reasons.
is that Mr. Pecron?
I think it's Mr. Pecron's flight attendant or pilot. But so I just want to make it clear that the thought around the 2 additional members, you can't really put them in a zone because we don't have zones, equal number of zones with the people that we'd be adding. So was just a way to bridge the gap. I mean, that came as an adaptation of one of the things the mayor had asked for us to consider, and so that's why I was asking you all to consider that, but I'm fine with it being delayed at this point, and it's probably advisable.
Yeah, I think that we were just wanting to be sure that there was plenty of time, if it was voted to add, that those people had plenty of time to get the training, because I know everybody, as they were appointed to the cab, was, and we probably shouldn't continue to call it a cab, but something else, but so they could have some training to know, their responsibilities, the amount of time it's going to take, because it is they can tell you it is time consuming.
Mr. Pecron just told me that he is present and on mute now.
Okay. Mr. Pecron, we were discussing earlier the cab and the adding people to the cab is not time sensitive, so we're gonna deal with that in a work session, and if we decide to take action in December. Our other discussion has been, around, PPC and having one per building, and, whether or not, we want to extend the previously set timeline, for the PPC. And no voting has happened yet, but nominations have come in. There was feeling by some members of the board that one per building opened it up more to the picture that we had in our head when we decided to go with the PPC, as opposed to LREA being the sole bargaining agent. And other people were saying, and Mr. Poor was saying that he liked the idea of the 8, and the commissioner liked the idea of the 8, and others expressed different opinions. Some felt one way because it wasn't taken care of in October, and others were sympathetic to the process in general. We discussed different districts. Some have, and Ms. McFetridge's experience in Springdale was one per building, and that worked really well. And I think Dr. Rollins had told me they had a total of 34. Then the commissioners shared in Pulaski County, they have 25 buildings, but they have a smaller group. They don't have one per building. And so anyway, there was discussion back and forth, and didn't know if you wanted to discuss something along that line, or if you have heard enough from my explanation, or if you have specific questions for other members regarding what your thoughts are along that line.
My only question right now is, what would the total number be?
Okay, hold on just a minute. The commissioners tell me I have a motion on the floor. Oh, the motion on the floor, we'll deal with this first, Mr. Peckrod, and then I'll come back to you. Is Mr. Williamson on the line as well? Okay, I thought he was. Anyway, Mrs. Newton moved, and we have a second? No. Oh, Ms. Dean seconded. We have a motion by Ms. Newton, second by Ms. Dean, to deal with the cab numbers and further discussion of the MOU after we have a work session and get to the December meeting. It was not time sensitive, which I thought it was when I made the decision to talk about it today. It was not time sensitive, the commissioner says, so the motion is to delay that till we've had a work session and a meeting in December. I have the motion by Ms. Newton, second by Ms. Dean, and let me take a voice vote, and then if I need to, we'll go back and take a per-person vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Mr. Williamson is asking for a call-in number. Who had, Dan, do you have that? Tiffany? Okay,
I think Ms. Wendell's saying that she sent it to him.
Okay.
So she's taken care of.
Okay. So let's wait till he gets on the line, and then I'll try to explain that. In the meantime, Mr. Pecron, if you will, wait till Mr. Williamson gets on the line so we don't have to keep repeating ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
At the end. No. We're gonna take it at the end today. We heard public comment on the whole item 13 yesterday. No, it was on all 4 items. We're not taking public comment until the end of the meeting today.
Brett Williamson.
Okay, Mr. Williamson, you're on the line?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the discussion to this point has been whether to have a PPC with a representative from each building, or whether to go with the 8 teachers and 3 administrators that apparently was in the October agenda item, but some of us didn't realize. Ms. McFetridge has had experience in Springdale with 1 per building, and she says it works really well. The commissioner asked Mr. Poore to talk about it, and he feels comfortable with the only having 8 as opposed to 1 per building. I have talked with the superintendent in Springdale and North Little Rock and Bentonville, and Fort Smith sent word, but I didn't actually have a conversation. Some of them have 1 per building and some have smaller. Bentonville and Springdale, which are closer in number to Little Rock, have 1 per building. They say it has not been an issue. Is there anything I'm missing? I'm not trying to sway anybody's opinion. I want to be sure of.
Did you mention the 250 people that
yes,
were
so far, 250 people have put their name out there, which seems like we have a great deal of interest. So some of us are thinking narrowing that to 8 may not be the best idea, since we were hoping to have more voice. Ms. McAdoo was saying that there already is a person in each building that can carry messages, and so she feels that the 8 would be a better idea because they already have something in place for communication. So it just sort of gets down to.
Well, there was one more piece.
Sure, Ms. This is Ms. McAdoo.
The other piece was that I believe Mr. Poore said at 11 o'clock today, the names that had already been submitted for nomination are going to be released to the Little Rock School District to then vote on.
Okay, thank you.
is
Yes,
an hour
Mr.
from
Poore did mention that the timeline that was set in place called for the nominations to have come in, and then the third party to release those today. And so the question and the timeliness of this is, if we are going to extend it to 1 per building, then we need to make that decision this morning so that timeline can change. It may involve renegotiating the contract with the third-party person. The logistics could be worked out in some people's opinion, and it would be a pain in other people's opinions. So Mr. Pacron and you have both phoned in, and I will pause now to see if either of you have comments that you would like to make. And somebody's phone's not on mute, so Mr. Pacron, will you go first?
I'm here.
Okay, did you have any comment on this one way or the other, or need any more information?
I think the idea of having more representation would be a good thing, and so I'm supportive of the plan.
Okay. Mr. Williamson, did you have any additional input or information you would like to share?
No, I think having, 1 per building is the best way to go.
Okay, I don't have that motion on the floor right now, but we wanted to be sure all the board members had an opportunity to express their opinion, and I'll see if we have a motion.
I'd like to make the motion that we open up the PPC to have one representative from each building.
Did you all hear that? Ms. McFettridge
restate
has,
that, please?
yes, Ms. McFettridge has moved that we open up and have one PPC member per building. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr.
Second.
Moore, and we'll take a voice vote. Ms. Nolan, you're out of order.
You absolutely did, and you just had a member of your board tell you she didn't think it was a good idea for you to continue to let you manage. And you get the teacher of the year saying it's not a good idea, and you've got the superintendent saying it's not a good idea.
Ms. Zook, Lori Freno, Division of Elementary and Secondary Education. It sounds to me like folks are seeking public comment. That is completely up to the board. There has to be a motion, however, to hear public comment, and then it has to be voted on by the board. In the absence of a motion, then the default is that there will be no public comment on an agenda item. I just wanted to make sure y'all understood that. Okay.
Having no motion,
I motion that we have public comment.
I'm sorry, it's not up to you. It's up to a board member.
That has been made that so absolutely clear.
I have a motion on the floor to expand to one per, would you please remove her from the room? The one sitting here?
This is so heartbreaking. You guys do not care.
We did what y'all asked us to do. Seriously, no. You're not, you didn't motion for it, so you're not. You're not. Stop, you're not, you're not.
On the PPC? More discussion. Oh, okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we will have more discussion by board members. Some of the board members that have a slightly different view for their own personal reasons would like for Mr. Williamson and Mr. Peckrod to hear their views. Ms. Dean?
I just wanted to echo what Ms. Chambers and Ms. Newton stated as far as the process and the district being able to move forward, and being that Superintendent Poore feels like this is the best move forward to develop the bylaws and such. Once this initial group develops the bylaws, they have an opportunity to write into the bylaws to increase the number of members. I think building level representation is a good thing. I'm glad to hear that Ms. McAdoo said that there is already building level representation there, which can work with this 11-member group. I think it would be a good idea for us, for them to, for there to be an increase of representation at some point, perhaps. But being that the process has already been started, and this is what we voted on before, and the names will be released at 11 o'clock today, which means the process would have to start all the way over. I have an issue with the process of that, of not allowing the district to be able to move forward. I like the idea of building level representation on the PPC, but at this point, it feels like it's the best option for the Little Rock School District for them to allow them to be able to move forward with what has already been implemented. And Secretary Key also said that his experience with an eight-member PPC with, I think you said Pulaski County, has been a positive one. So that's all helped to ease my mind, because my mind initially was, I think that's great for each building to have its own representation in the PPC. But understanding now that that process has already been started, it's already moved forward, it's already rolling, I think it would be, it would not be helpful to the Little Rock School District to impede that process. And I feel like if we backtrack, I think it'll be impeding the process. So for that reason, I am leaning toward, I'm geared toward leaving it as it is, and just letting them move forward.
Okay. Ms. Newton?
Just so that Mr. Williamson and Mr. Peckron can hear what I had said, I will repeat kind of what I had said before. My feelings were, I like the idea of one per building, but because the process has already started and we have over 200 teachers who have shown interest in serving on the Personnel Policy Committee, that shows to me that there is an excitement among the teachers about the Personnel Policy Committee. And I want teachers excited about anything right now. And if this is something that they are bought into and they're excited about, then I don't want to do anything detrimental to that. And so my issue with the one per building is the timing of this. If we had done it last month, I would have voted for it. But I cannot see us going back and saying, no, we're not, when we're going to start all over, because I think that, again, would be hurtful to the process that we're trying to do to move Little Rock to full control. I think that would slow down the process. There has been precedent of working with an 8-member board or eight-member personnel policy committee to develop bylaws and to work with a district. And so I think this could work, and I think it could be a great thing for the Little Rock district, but I don't want to throw any kind of a monkey wrench into the process that's already been started and that the teachers have already bought into.
And
Okay.
I would just like to add to those that are on the call, I don't know how much you heard prior to Madam Chair giving you a recount of what was said, but when Mr. Poore was up speaking to us, he mentioned that no one had contacted him via email or otherwise to express a disinterest in the process. And I shared with them that as an employee district, I received notification. I tried to do a quick check on the phone. The one I pulled up was dated October 28th, but I do know that I received at least 2, I really want to say 3, but at least 2 reminder emails to make a nomination and telling me very clearly what the process was. So every person in the district was aware of this process after the last meeting the last state board meeting, and the nominations have been made by the Little Rock School District employees.
Dr. Moore, you want to share your, since they didn't hear it, rather than them having to hear it from me?
Yes, I think, again, that the level of interest is high at 250 members. I think that's great, and I think that to have a steady stream of communication and a feedback loop to all teachers at the onset, it would be so important to have that big representation. I know it's a logistical struggle to deal with 40 people versus 8, but I think that can be overcome by talking with other districts who also have large PPCs to learn what they do. I do understand this is a new process to the district, and when you do new things, there can be hiccups. There's also a process in which maybe teachers didn't know how many people could be on. It is not clear in law. That is set by the district. And so, I think that in the future, if that number wanted to shrink, it could be shrunk. But right now, at the onset, to set the procedures, to set this new process on a great foot, we could have more people. To me, I haven't heard a strong enough justification as to why the timeline would have to be grossly pushed back. If you already have 250 nominations, I would assume there's one per school, but you can assume that. You'd have to open up the window for a couple more days, but a lot of that work has already been done. Certainly that, I'm not placing fault, but you have to talk to the third party who's doing that, but I don't see a justification for why it would take that much longer. in that process. So.
Okay, Ms. McFettridge?
I guess I'm really surprised that this is looked on as a negative. I feel like every building would have representation, and I just think that is so important to make sure that everybody is sitting at the table and has a vote on the PPC committee. I just feel really strongly about it. It's representation. We heard so much yesterday about representation. This is it. This would be it. Thank you.
Dr. Hill?
Yeah, I want to say, if I understand it right, there is representation from.
Not a vote, there's a
You're
representative,
right, not
but
a vote,
not a
yeah,
vote,
yeah.
right.
But I think it's so important that we listen to the superintendent and the person in charge of the day-to-day operations. When you're trying to lead an organization or institution, the day-to-day operations, we're governance and oversight. And if he sits there and tells me that he wants to go back and do that, for this process purposes, I think that's a valid reason. But I'm hearing Superintendent Poore said he is pleased with the process. He's had no negative comments or individuals reaching out to him. And I'm going back to what we discussed yesterday. Let's let this process work the way I'm seeing it. If they want to expand it later on, but we've already started moving, and the day-to-day operations belong to the superintendent of Little Rock School District, Mike Poore. And unless you want to come up and give us your opinion of why it should be changed, then I think we vote to support what he wants.
Okay.
That's my
And I think the reason that it was being discussed by us and having a vote is because we were the ones who initiated having a PPC based on Act 728. Okay, are we ready for a vote? Dr. Moore, did you have something else?
Well, again, this is just new territory.
Right.
And I understand there has been building reps in the past, but that building rep doesn't have anything to do with this. This is a new process, a different thing. And certainly, as the district moves forward, there, just like Springdale, there will be ways to learn how to weave that in together and work that together. But for this new process, I just think there's a strong footing with more communication.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. We'll take a roll call. Sorry, not a voice vote.
Dr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Ms. McFettridge?
Yes.
Ms. Dean?
No.
Ms. Chambers?
I'm sorry, did you say Ms. Chambers?
Yes, Ms. Chambers.
Thank you, sorry, no.
Dr. Hill?
No.
Ms. Newton?
No.
Mr. Peckron?
Yes.
Madam Chair, would you care to vote?
Yes.
5 votes in favor, 4 votes against.
Shame.
Okay, so we've had a motion, and we're going to delay the discussion about the CAB and the rest of the MOU. I think that was all. I don't have my agenda from yesterday right here in my hand. I think those were the only thing. And one of the things on the MOU that I think it was listed under the 9 board, when we were showing the 9 board positions. So that process right now calls for that to go to the CAB, public comment, and then a recommendation from the CAB to come back to the commissioner. I would like for that to come back to the board. So.
Madam Chair, can we wait and discuss that after we have a work session?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, agree, okay. So now we're on to today's agenda. Are there any changes other than the one we just dealt with? Okay, now we have reports. Any particular visits or committee meetings or things that individual board members did? Ms. Newton, we'll start with you.
Okay. I have a couple of things. One thing is,
Can we make it clear that there still is public comment at the end?
Yeah.
That's on our
We will
agenda,
have,
is to
yeah,
have
public
public
comment, we will have that at the end, just as it is on
Thank
the
you. I just
agenda.
wanted to make that clear.
do we want to take a short break while people move around, or are they through moving, or?
Okay, if you're gonna leave, would you do? Oh, yes, Sharon, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot.
Yeah. Let's take a break and let Sharon
Okay,
get
we'll
her
take a
stuff.
break and let Ms. Hill gather up her stuff, and then we'll come back. So a brief break, like, come back in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Report.
As a former math teacher, both of my comments are about literacy. This last month, I had an opportunity to go into 2 first-grade classrooms and observe their literacy lesson, their RISE lesson. And one of them was a very small district, and one of them was a very large district. And it was surprising. It was surprising to me how alike they were. The only differences really were, each teacher has their kind of own style, and they put their own spin on things, but the content of what these first graders were learning was amazing.
You really were out of your element, literacy
and first grade. I was out of my element, but it was amazing how much these first graders, in the first few weeks of school, I mean, we were still in the first 9 weeks of school when I went, and to see what they were learning. But I did get discouraged a little bit because as a teacher, what I saw in the lessons was whole group, and I thought, whole group, there's always going to be that one that's going through the motions and whatever. So I was a little bit discouraged over that until I looked down at where I was sitting. I happened to be sitting in one of the classrooms at the table where the teacher does some other work with students. And I looked down, and she had every student's name, and beside the name, she had specific skills that she was going to work one-on-one with those children. So it was amazing to me that in that first 9 weeks, she already knew what each one of them, what their strengths were and what their deficits were, and they were already working to try to bring each child to where they needed to be.
So she was sort of doing tier 1 and 2 almost simultaneously.
It was all going on. You know, we were getting whole group, and we were getting. I wasn't there for the individual part, but they were going to get that instruction also, and then they were going to get small group instruction. And so the amount, I'm encouraged that. I know we see what our reading scores are right now, and if we look at those, it's discouraging. But I know what we're working on right now. I know what's going on in those classrooms. Again, from a large district or a small district, so much was in common, and the kids are learning, and it may take a few years for us to get there, but reading scores are going to go up if we stay with it, and don't change courses. And along that lines, anybody have a question you want to ask about that?
No, I just
Okay.
I wish I'd have been with you.
Yeah, it was really good. One of the things that I got this week, actually got it over the weekend, was from NASB, and they have been looking at the, I'm sure you saw the NAEP results that were released nationwide and statewide results that were released, and they have concerns as an organization about where our reading levels are, and they are in the process of signing on to a statement about, it's a call to action, and I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but I do, because we participate, I do want you to be aware of what the statement says, and so I'm going to read you some highlights of that statement that's going to be, I think, signed on by NASB. It says, on October 30th, 2019, NAEP released new national and state results for 4th and 8th graders in math and reading. After reviewing the results and observing the performance of students, we want to express the urgency that we see with the faltering reading results and dispiriting stagnant math results. So this addresses 5 critical areas for action. We call on education officials, policymakers, advocates, and the entire education community to embrace the science of learning, to push for high-quality standards-aligned materials, advance the capacity of teachers in teaching literacy, and assist organizations and communities in their efforts to strengthen reading strategies for their students. In the area of embracing what we know about the science of reading, the importance of strong reading habits, instruction in early reading in particular has the most solid research behind it in anything in education. We've known for more than 2 decades, at least since the report of the National Reading Panel, that the successful instruction of almost all beginning readers must include phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, and text comprehension instruction. In the area of standard-aligned, content-rich curriculum, states such as Mississippi and Louisiana, which have had positive NAEP reading results, illustrate what is possible when these strategies are implemented patiently and effectively. In the area of advancing the capacity of teachers and school leaders to effectively teach and implement literacy strategies, a 2018 report from the National Council on Teaching Quality found that only 37% of elementary and special education teacher prep programs include evidence-based methods of reading instructions. Teacher preparation programs must ensure teachers and literacy coaches are highly competent in scientifically based reading instruction. In the area of assisting organizations and communities in their efforts, we recommend expanding opportunities for students while better supporting families as stakeholders and assets in their children's success in reading. Knowing that there is a summer reading loss with many students, we want to prioritize strategies that keep them reading throughout the whole year. Therefore, we call on states to mobilize community partnerships to increase access to publicly available educational resources. And there's also a call to increase the federal investment in literacy. While the primary responsibility for teaching children to read and write lies at the state and local level, this national challenge warrants federal support. Congress should increase funding for evidence-based, comprehensive literacy efforts for children from birth through 12th grade. And so that, I think, is, you're going to see probably a release from NASB in the next week, a few days on that.
We could tell them we're glad that y'all got on, that NASB got on board with Arkansas.
Yeah, yeah.
With
So,
the
but
RISE
anyway,
initiative,
yes.
the science of reading,
It-
the literacy award that we got that Ms. Smith will tell us about later. But yes,
Yes.
thank you for bringing that. And
It aligned directly with what we are doing here in Arkansas. And so I think my greatest comment on this, from what I've observed, from the statement, from the results that were released from NAEP, is that we've got to stay the course. We can't quit now. We're going to see positive results, but we're going to have to be patient and keep training teachers and keep going forward.
right. It's not just the shiny new bus that came
Yes.
in. It's
Yes.
for the long haul.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hill, do you have any special report? Ms. Dean?
A report from Family and Community Engagement. The FACE team is currently reviewing district parental engagement plans for federal and state compliance. So all of those have been turned in. They've got a tremendous job of going over every single one of those and pulling out the things that were really good, pointing out those things, and helping them to improve those plans as they go through them. So they,
Okay.
Also, the team has continued to collaborate with the Practicum team from the Clinton School of Public Service, and they're working to develop a survey and implementation plans that will gather information on ways to increase family engagement across Arkansas. They hosted a monthly parent engagement facilitator coordinator advisory Zoom meeting on October 24th. That was the first one, if I'm not mistaken. And it was the largest meeting to date, and the team is hoping to see it continuously grow. And the next meeting is on November 21st at 2 o'clock. Either Kim Wright or Chelsea Moore will present it at the Arkansas Public School Resource Center Conference in Hot Springs, the Arkansas Association for Alternative Educators in Arkadelphia, and the Arkansas Non-Public School Accrediting Association. One or both also participated in the State Health Coalition meeting, the School Readiness Summit, the Communities and Schools meeting at the Clinton School for Public Service, the Family and Community Engagement in STEM webinar, and the Engaging Families for Healthier, Happier Students webinar. As we've picked up steam with this family engagement piece, they've had more and more opportunities be presented to them. They've been asked to come to join different meetings and to be a part of different things. So they've had a lot more put on their plate, but it's been great to know that so many people are now really interested in that family engagement piece. So that's been a great opportunity for them to spread the word more so in Arkansas. So we're continuing to communicate and message around engagement and the FACE framework and toolkit through social media posts, emails, virtual meetings, and the conference opportunities. The school performance unit recently added a translator, Cassandra Wilson, to their team, and our team is working with her to develop strategies to improve communication with our Spanish-speaking families in Arkansas. And also, we'll be glad to have Mr. Reginald Ballard join us on our Family and Community Task Force meeting, which will be today, right after this meeting. I'm looking forward to him working with our task force and the division and the City of Little Rock, the mayor's office. So I'm looking forward to that partnership and that communication so that we can get some things done for our families and community here.
Well, I think the community and stakeholder engagement and the leadership that you have shown, and with the help of Dr. Hill and others, I think that just has led nicely into the whole idea around community school and the work that we're hearing from all communities, but in particular the Little Rock School District community about wanting to have that opportunity and having a toolkit to bounce off is great.
Yes, absolutely. I just also want to add, I can't go forward without reiterating the fact that the department and the commissioner put the backing behind saying that we believe that family engagement and community engagement is important, because we have a whole new division that was not there before. There's a whole new team of paid staff, so that's a huge part of why it's been able to move forward. So thank you again for that.
Yeah, very much. Ms. McFedridge, anything?
I went to the ribbon cutting at the Lisa Academy up in my neighborhood, so it was a real nice event. Exciting. They're doing a lot of great things for the kids.
Yeah, and I understand they're already working with the Springdale District some too, so that's great.
They are.
Dr. Moore?
Yes, I did. I went to the NASB, National Association of State Board Conference, a couple weeks ago. It was great. Dr. Barth was there. He was honored as an award as a past chair. I forgot the specific award, but it was great. He also did a session on civic education with a couple other states, so it was great to hear his input and others. They recognized Rita Newton on the Government Affairs Committee, Susan Chambers on the Finance Committee, and it was a good time to talk with others in our role in other states, problem solve with similar problems we're facing. They are looking for someone on their Public Education Position Committee that reviews all of their beliefs and statements and how they advocate at the federal level for our state boards. I think the most striking sessions, one was by Mississippi on their reading. So it was great to hear some of the work they're doing, a long way to go, but what they've done to get where they are. And then another one was an organization called Turnaround for Children. I'd never heard of them before, but they are an organization that looks really at the science of the brain and how that interacts with how students learn, and really takes that body of knowledge to teachers to better teach teachers. I was very enlightening of how kids learn and how we can use that in our practices in the classroom. So it was a good conference, and encourage anyone else to come.
Ms. McAdoo?
Yes.
Mr. Peckron, Mr. Williamson, or Ms. Chambers, do either of you all have a report that you want to give when Ms. McAdoo finishes?
I do not, Madam Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chambers. I think what happens, they answer, they have it on mute, and they don't realize it's on mute. So if you do have something, please let me know as soon as Ms. McAdoo finishes. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to actually read to you today instead of talking to you, because last time sort of went other places. The picture that you see behind you or in front of you was captured the day I was named the 2019 Arkansas Teacher of the Year. It is the faces, words of endearment, and frankly, the prayers of these babies that pushed me to be a better person. Since being a part of this board, I've lost 2 uncles to cancer and a close student in a horrific accident. In every instance, my students and parents were the first to reach out to lift me up. My signature poem, since being named the Forever 2019 Arkansas Teacher of the Year, has become an original one, has become one that I recite quite frequently. As a matter of fact, I was late today because I was doing the welcome at the Arkansas Literacy Conference. And see, this is why I get off script, I'm sorry. Okay, so in it, there's a line where I say, I don't teach a subject, I teach a child, the whole child. And at its most simplest synopsis, the poem is about the power and dynamics of communication, connections, and relationships between students and teachers, and how public educators are charged with teaching every type of child, regardless of the resources or lack of that they are provided. During my entire teaching career and my tenure as the Teacher of the Year, I've also been very vocal about my position regarding standardized tests, specifically about using them to reward or using them punitively, as well as the psychological damage associated with labeling and shaming schools and students as failing. That too is about education being more than just academics. Being a teacher is hard. It can also be emotionally draining. Often teachers feel attacked, undervalued, overworked, and not treated as professionals. It especially hurts when it feels like administrators, politicians, and educational policymakers are contributing to those attacks. Some of you have an education background, have been in the classroom, are parents, have worked with or around children, or know someone who has. Board members and Secretary Key, the following questions are things that I would like for you to think about and answer. Raise your hand if you've ever had a phone call in the middle of the night from the hospital chaplain informing you that your student's mother just died and asking if you could come be with them at the hospital. Raise your hand if a legal guardian has ever called you for help because their child was literally in a physical closet and would not come out. Raise your hand if a mother of a student has ever called you to inform you that she and the student had gotten into an argument and the child left home shoeless and she needed help searching the neighborhood to try to find him.
I had children who were shoeless, but I didn't get a call.
Okay, thank you. Raise your hand if you've ever been put on the visitors list of a student who is committed to a psychiatric unit due to a mental or eating disorder. Raise your hand if you've ever had a phone call from a mother who minutes before had just learned of her child's death, and she called you because she wanted you to be the first person to know before it hit the news. Raise your hand if you've ever taught a student convicted of murder or have received letters from students in jail or rehab thanking you for loving them in spite of their mistakes, reminiscing about a lesson or a particular day in class, or asking for book recommendations or apologizing for letting you down. I could go on with countless lists and scenarios of phone calls, events, trauma that I've personally had to deal with outside of my contract time. Likewise, I can share tons of stories about the tears I've wiped, behavior I've helped to modify, goals or plans I've helped to devise, or students I've literally had to physically pick up and carry due to the immobilization of anxiety attacks, a mental breakdown, or a suicide attempt during instruction time. The brilliance, resilience, redemption, and growth from these scenarios will never be able to be quantified or tested. These are just some of the real stories about the students who I teach, who, by the way, volunteer to enroll in the most rigorous classes they can handle to try to be their best and to put one foot in front of the other and play school despite everything they are dealing with outside of the walls of my classroom. So as you are looking at data and numbers and closing down, repurposing, reconstituting staff and schools, making decisions about those kids and the not yet schools, because I refuse to call them failing schools, these selfish, lazy, always complaining, who don't really know what's best for them teachers, and doing up on us because it worked somewhere else, or because you think our views are in or represent the minority, and that your way or your thoughts are best, please visualize my face and those of the students before you, and know that if their faces, their parents, their teachers don't have a true say in the decisions that are being made to or about them, you cannot use the word community. Community buy-in, community engagement, community advisory boards, nor community schools.
Thank you. I do agree with you that reading quickly and in a timed way and being tested on the comprehension of that is, I can't think of any occupation where that skill is necessary unless maybe an attorney in the middle of a court trial. So on the standardized testing, I think we see things more alike than different. Okay, special ed report. They want to acknowledge in your presence and to congratulate Robin Stripling. Robin was recently awarded the Donna Reed Award for Administrators from the Arkansas Council for Exceptional Children. This award was established for recognizing individuals whose occupational skills are utilized to serve and promote the welfare of persons with disabilities and whose work has resulted in effective academic educational practices that are developmentally appropriate and individualized for students. So we do congratulate Robin. Over 500 teachers and administrators attended the Alternative Pathway to Graduation training at the state's educational cooperatives during the last 2 months. Additionally, inclusive practices were highlighted in the training. The curriculum and assessment team attended the CCSSO and SCASS meetings in late October to discuss issues pertaining to students with disabilities with SCASS members from other states. The special ed unit submitted a 1% alternative assessment waiver extension request to the U.S. Department of Education on November 1st. The state had to again ask for this waiver based on the ESSA mandate that states have 1% or less of their students. Ms. Kaufman, are you all still meeting with the TAC committee? And so that is something that is being dealt with or bringing before them as well? Okay, thank you. The dispute resolution section provided a 3-hour training question and answer session with mostly assistant principals on IDEA requirements for disciplinary actions for students receiving special education service. The training topics were manifestation determination reviews, provision of FAPE during ISS and OSS, mediation, facilitated IEPs, state complaints and due process hearings, and effective communication with parents. I noticed Mr. Poore left, but they had canceled the July training for the Little Rock School District, and it was scheduled to be in November, and I didn't know if it happened or not. So we will check with him on that. Okay, Commissioner.
I'm going to ask Stacy to start with us with the Commissioner's report, where she will talk about the literacy grant that we just got. And then after she's finished, Kim Friedman will come and talk about an exciting initiative called Schools on the Move.
Welcome, Ms. Smith. Also, congratulations on going into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, my goodness.
See, I keep up with you. Yeah, she's going into the Trojans Hall of Fame as an outstanding athlete.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. Glad to be here today to talk about literacy and not soccer. Thank you. Super excited about this award for our state, $38 million over the next 5 years. And really, when we wrote the grant, we really kind of were given short notice of once we realized it was up and to be able to apply. And what was really, I thought, spoke volumes was we were able to put together a very large grant request pretty quickly because of all of the foundational work our state has done. And we pretty much knew what those next steps were and what we were waiting on about capacity and how to build. And so we were pretty much able to put it together because we were so well positioned, okay? Well positioned because of policies that have been passed, well positioned for the fact of the support from the governor's office and Commissioner Key on doing Rise Arkansas, the commitment from schools across the state, the educational cooperatives. You know, 2 years ago when we started, I can't say we were all on the same page. We have had lots of conversations and lots of training, but everybody at this moment feels like literacy is that piece that we're kind of all at least agreeing on some things that need to occur. So I want to tell you a little bit about kind of the framework of what's happening. So we've got 5-year grant. This first year, we've got about $1.1 million that was already given to us to kind of establish our literacy state team. Also beginning to work on some goals with early childhood and pre-K components. In year 2, the state will receive around $9 million. In year 3, $11 million. Year 4, $10 million. And in the 5th year, $5 million. 95% of the $38 million will be sub-granted out to our schools and partners. Okay, and that is for implementation of the work. And that's probably been the thing that we have heard over and over again. We can go do training all we want, but the support in the classrooms, the materials, and the supplies for actual implementation is what's needed. And it's needed at the school level for teachers in the classroom. We have had thousands of teachers go through training, and it's amazing. But when they get back in that classroom, they have to have the support, and they have to have matching materials that support it. And that's where we've struggled. This grant is going to make it possible for districts to get that support, materials, extra coaching, implementation. So that's huge. So 95% of those funds will go to schools and partners to be able to do that. 40% is designed for elementary, and 40% is designed for secondary literacy. 15% is designed and aimed at early childhood. And so for early childhood, we want to develop pre-K Rise, beginning partnering with our ABC programs and other state. DHS has been a part of this conversation, getting that continuous piece so that we are seamless between preschool moving into elementary. We know that oral language and access are big pieces. Partnering with Dolly Parton's Imagination Library and getting books into communities where books are not, where it's not common that every child has multiple books. That's what we want to do. And so portions of these funds will be in that partnership to get books in the hands of kids and communities. We did.
Let me interrupt there. Will you work
Yes.
with the groups that already have established, like I know Dixie Evans up in White County and Ann Dixon work on the Imagination Library. Will you work with assisting them with that, or is it mainly going to be to go into areas where they don't have an established literacy working on Imagination Library?
So we do want to have priority areas, okay? So communities and areas where they do not have the support, communities or school districts that have fallen into those levels 3s and 4s in need of additional support in the areas of literacy. That's where we really want to concentrate. We want to be able to put additional coaches in those areas to be able to support teachers. So in those communities, those same communities are the same areas that we want to flood in with books. And so we're in the process right now of putting together the grant application and what that would look like. Has Amy come down? Is Amy Counts in the room? Okay. she's upstairs. Amy Counts is, she is one of our literacy specialists here at the department, and she has just been named the program manager for the grant. And so she's in the process of pulling together a grant application and kind of distinguishing those features. It will be competitive subgrants. So when I said 95% is going to go out, those are competitive subgrants. But
Okay.
priority will be given to identified areas.
So
and
do they
districts.
do it through the hospital? So when a baby's born, the parents sign up to get it, and then it starts immediately from there on the books that go out each month?
I'm not 100% sure how they identify.
Okay.
Okay, that would be something. I know Dr. Charlotte Green, who runs the Dolly Parton Imagination Library for the state, we've been working with her, and she's worked with us on the grant.
Okay, great.
Okay. Another component, just within RISE, our three main goals were to strengthen the focus for teachers in the classroom. So again, we want to be able to expand RISE, and we want to be able to support and implement with coaching. The second one was about creating community collaboration. So through this grant, we actually wrote in components with higher ed, bring in higher ed for training. We feel like that needs to be seamless. We've already had a lot of work around working with higher ed partners with literacy and the science of reading, and that has been very positive. Again, that probably was the most difficult conversation 2 years ago, is getting our higher ed partners all together on the same page. But I knew when we went to the summit last year and I saw the University of Arkansas there with 30 of their staff, that spoke volumes. And they were all going to the literacy session saying, we need this, we need this, we need this. That spoke volumes. We have numerous universities around the state that are working collaboratively with educational cooperatives and specialists together. That's big, but we want to continue to be able to support and collaborate with them and build that capacity. Another area that we had was really about building a culture of reading in the state of Arkansas. And so creating a RISE Community Award that acknowledges communities for actively participating and being part of this. So as you're building this whole piece of your early childhood components, your businesses and partners coming together to be able to sustain it, we might be able to provide the books for the first couple of years, but we want it to be going beyond that. So we want to build this RISE Community Award, which we work with the Chamber and other organizations so that we can sustain some of these things that this grant is going to give us the opportunity in the beginning to get going. So very thrilled about this. Thank you for supporting us with it. I will tell you again, it was about a week that we found about it and then had to be submitted. Within a week, we had over 20 letters of support from universities across the state, from the governor's office, Congressman Hill, Congressman Westerman, Dr. Barth submitted one on behalf of the state board, but various folks submitted letters saying we want to support the state in this, and we're excited to be partners. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Any questions on that? Next.
Ms. Friedman.
Good morning. Kimberly Mundell, Director of Communications for the Division of Elementary and Secondary
I
Education.
apologize. Old habits.
It's okay.
First they want to be division, and then they change names.
Just don't call me Mundell. It's Mundell. I'm here to tell you about an exciting new social media campaign we're going to launch on Monday. If you've been following us on social media this week on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, we've been promoting our Schools on the Move campaign. And we're going to officially launch that on Monday. And what we're doing is there were just so many outstanding schools that with the latest accountability reports, state and federal reports, we saw a lot of increases in gains in ESSA scores, letter grades, weighted achievement, value-added growth. And we wanted to take the opportunity to really start recognizing these schools, just giving them a simple shout-out with a simple graphic starting next week. We had 6 schools, as you guys know. I'm sure Ms. Kaufman has covered this in previous reports. We had 6 schools that actually increased letter grades by 2 letter grades. And that's an increase from last year where we had, I think, about 3. And these schools are schools that are in the Delta. They're small schools, some decent-sized large schools. But we want to really recognize those. We also want to recognize those that there were 150 schools that increased letter grades, at least 1 letter grade, And ESSA school index scores, we had over 500 schools, 550 schools that increased that. Weighted achievement scores, over 500 schools that increased that as well. And then at least 576 that saw increases in value-added scores. Now, we won't be able to recognize every one of those. That's a lot of schools to recognize, but we did want to try to start at the high level and really give a shout out to those schools that are doing some amazing work. The campaign starts Monday. It runs through March of next year. So we're going to post maybe 2 or 3 a week, just a simple, recognition for those schools. We're going to wrap it up in March because we're going to get ready to start releasing new letter grades in the springtime as well. So, or the next cycle of accountability reports are going to be worked on. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you about that. We encourage you to watch out for that, tag your schools, tag schools that your children are in, tag your districts, share it on your pages, help us spread the good news.
So with 500, that's almost half of all of them in the state. That's incredible.
And also, I want to thank Deb's team. Dr. Eric Flowers has been working on a special report. I want to show you how to get to the page. If you go to our homepage, and Dan has it pulled up on the topics A to Z, if you click on S, and then scroll down to Schools on the Move Toward Excellence. And this was just updated this week, and Dr. Eric Flowers and Dr. Alexandra Boyd have been working with those 6 schools that saw increases in letter grades of at least 2 letter grades. They have actually gone in on this webpage and written a small analysis for each one of those. If you want to scroll on down a little bit, Dan, those are the 6 schools, and then for each one of those, you can see that Eudora Elementary increased from an F to a C. And not just saying, hey, they increased from an F to a C, but they actually reached out to those individual schools, their principals, their administrators, and wanted to really capture what did they do to see that increase. So go ahead and scroll up a little bit more, Dan. So there's really an analysis piece for each one of those 6 schools. And then if you go down further on that webpage, you can see more information about the list of the schools that saw increases in other categories as well. But one thing, too, is this is not just a campaign to promote the great work schools are doing, but we also want to use this as an educational tool for parents in the communities to really encourage them to go to our My School Info website. We want them to dig into the data. If you want to know more information about your school, and maybe they don't get featured in the campaign, but what did my school do? So some of the posts that we're going to be posting is really going to encourage them to go to My School Info and dig into that data a little bit deeper. So do you guys have any questions?
I think it's awesome.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything more? That's it? Okay. Any new business? Okay, we're ready for public comment. Allie Nolan. Just identify yourself.
My name is Allie Noland. I have 2 young kids in this district. My daughter's name is Willa. She is 6 years old, and she's in the 1st grade. My son's name is Brady. He is 4 years old, and he has an entire career in the Little Rock School District ahead of him. We are here because we care about these issues, and you all have lost every bit of credibility to be able to ever talk about community engagement or community input when you had parents here that signed up to speak on an issue specifically, and you chose to vote on it before hearing our input. That tells us that what we have to say doesn't matter. That was a close vote. In fact, it was a tie vote that had to be broken. Our input could have changed one mind on this board. But instead of listening to us, you took a vote and then decided to allow us to make statements for the record after the fact that will have no bearing on the outcome. How is that meaningful input? I met with Mr. Key, Mr. Poore, the new LRSD liaison. I provided a format that said, here are some procedures that will help build public trust. One of them was allow public comment on every item. There were separate things at issue here. The MOU and Mr. Pecron's proposed adjustments to that We talked about those yesterday. But the proposals about the PPC and the CAB, we did not have a motion on the table. We didn't know what your proposals were until today. So saying that we were barred from making public comment based on the fact that I spoke on the MOU yesterday just shows that you don't care about what we have to say on these issues that you were voting on today. There has been so much talk about lack of public trust. And I will give you an example. It costs me about $100 every time I go to a CAB meeting so that I can pay for childcare. I go, I sit through a 4-hour meeting, and I take the 3-minute public comment I'm given. Other teachers came to that CAB meeting where we talked about the PPC format. They spent their whole evening there to talk about this issue. And then we come to this meeting today, and you move the goalpost. You change the format. Why? Well, Ms. Sook, thank you for being transparent. It's because you don't like the outcome that the democratic process was producing. There were too many LREA members that were being presented and supported for that PPC. Ultimately, if we are getting local control back, at some point you're going to have to let the democratic process work for Little Rock. And you can't choose to change the format or move the goalpost every time you don't like whatever decision we make. Thank you.
Michelle Lynch.
Michelle Lynch, Arkansas State Teachers Association. I too was going to speak to the PPC configuration this morning. And during this process, between what was discussed here in the last board meeting and the CAB meeting, and even LREA members speaking that they thought one person per school would be best, I mistakenly made an assumption that that was going to be the configuration. And when we realized it was not going to be the configuration, that's when we started having conversations about if that could be changed. We haven't spoken to one teacher who did not want a true representative from each building. And so, and they do not get a vote on the CIC unless they are a member of LREA. So this way, that they will all have a vote in that and be truly represented. And as someone, I was over the Arkansas Leadership Academy's Teacher Leader Institute for 10 years, and one of the most viable things that happened there was that teachers from Northwest Arkansas to the Delta, all different kinds of schools and cultures, came together and had discussions, and they learned about what was going on in each other's areas and of the state, and they became advocates for each other. And it builds that culture. And when you look at something, when a culture needs to be built up, there's just no better way than to have everyone at the table together. It is more difficult to facilitate, but as teachers, we are master facilitators. I mean, we can facilitate a room, and that's important. So as they have this voice and they represent the people in their building, and they're not going to represent ASTA, or that's not what we want. We want them representing the people in their building and their kids and their needs. And that's why I was going to come in and say before, in comment in terms of that's what we think, and that's what we hear from our members and the teachers we talk to.
Okay, thank you. I have Veronica McClare signed up on 2 different sheets, so if you'll come to the McLean, sorry, my mistake, if you will come to, and you can speak on both items while you're there.
Wendy Sheridan asked me to sign up for her, and so
I see
I'll read
that.
her statement as well.
Okay, sure.
I've been taking notes,
That's okay.
trying to
I
get them together.
understand. It's a lot easier when you're writing it than when you have to stand up and say it. I get that.
Yeah. So 1 hour ago, you stated that your private conversations, Ms. Zook, should carry as much weight as those of us who are here speaking on public record. And you kind of made a whole big speech about that. And you talked about, you know, I have all these people who are reaching out to me. Why do those private, personal conversations carry more weight than these voices that are here on public record? Why? Why do your friends and y'all's private conversations, why do they carry more weight than what I have to say? What Allie has to say? What Khaki has to say? What Laura, what Tanisha, what everybody here has to say? Why? Everybody yesterday, the thousands of people yesterday that stood as one collective voice. Why do a few comments from a few friends that you say are coming to you, why do their voices matter more than ours?
We don't respond to public comment, we just listen.
Oh, okay. You like to raise your, okay. So on that, I have some friends too. And in a group of over, 2,527 people, and of course this only happened an hour ago, I'm sure that we'll get more votes, but I posted, do you prefer the LREA or a PPC? As of right now, we have 75 votes for LREA and only 1 for PPC. So could you please add that to your private conversations list? Thank you. Also, a statement from someone who has worked under a PPC, and I will keep this person anonymous because they've asked me to, but PPC are usually handpicked by the powers that be and often don't represent the majority because they're pets. I've also experienced when the rep speaks for us but has never brought the issue to us, so she doesn't know our thoughts on the matter. It's difficult to have one person represent an entire staff, especially large staff. So I think that the game here, and not allowing us to have these statements made prior is a slap in the face. It's a slap in the face to my time, to their time, to Stacy's time. You just continue to slap us in the face, and it's shameful. Wendy has to say, I'll move on to my next 3 minutes.
He's not trying to, he's just trying to get his phone to turn off.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the right email here. And Wendy did want to be here, but again, she has to work too. Sure. So, you know. As a member of the Little Rock community and a parent of 2 LRSD students, I am imploring you to listen to Mr. Poor. And again, this was based on the PPC and other issues, but you didn't allow us to speak earlier. I'm imploring you to listen to Mr. Poor, Ms. McAdoo, Ms. Chambers, Ms. Newton, Ms. Zook, respectively. Please stop Zook-splaining your position on this. We are educated adults who know exactly what the agenda you are pushing is. The teachers, parents, and community of Little Rock do not want you making any more decisions about us without us. Return full local control to a locally elected school board with full governing powers. Return the LREA to us, and stop trying to push your PPC plans, because we know what you're doing.
Thank you. Julia Taylor.
I have a couple more minutes on Wendy's, don't I?
Okay, I thought you were finished. I apologize.
No, I am.
Excuse me,
I just
Ms.
wanted
Taylor.
to make sure that I got to say that.
Okay. Ms. Taylor?
So I'm Julia Taylor. I am a product of the Little Rock School District, born and raised in Little Rock. I taught in Little Rock schools for 10 years, and I have a daughter at Little Rock Central High. And I'm going to be a little bit repetitive, but I think it's important that y'all hear, like, I'm going to say some of the same things Allie said and Ms. McLean said, but I think it's important that you all know that Allie Noland, even though I appreciate every single time she speaks out, is not the only person in the Little Rock School District who has that opinion. And I'd first of all like to, since you don't answer, just theoretically ask, y'all have talked a lot about what's best for the Little Rock District today. Well, who is the Little Rock District? Okay, I have a child in the Little Rock District. I have taught in the Little Rock District. The district is the students of the district, the teachers, and the parents that make up the Little Rock community. It is not the state board. Furthermore, I'm going to just echo again, because I think it's important, that while it sounds like there's some great community engagement programs going on within the state, it is laughable for you all to talk about community engagement in Little Rock when you will not listen to what the people have to say. The people of Little Rock. And I don't know if y'all just didn't pay any attention yesterday, but there were thousands of people here. Students, parents, teachers, retired teachers, substitute teachers, people who don't even have kids in the district but care about Little Rock. So I just would please ask you, oh, and one more thing I wanted to say is that I really don't like the attitude of reprimanding teachers for their one-day strike. Teachers haven't had a strike in Little Rock since 1987 when I was in high school, and they have done everything that they could do to avoid that. Teachers went on strike because they love their students. The teachers who taught yesterday have that right, and they also love their students. And the teachers are back in school today, and that's why I'm here, because they love their students. And I'm here because they can't be here. So I just think it's really important that you all take a step back from making decisions for the Little Rock School District and community until you have given us local control back completely, or until you're at least willing to listen to what the people have to say and actually take it into account.
Thank you. Justin Byrd.
Hi there, I'm Justin Byrd. I'm here representing myself and Central Arkansas DSA and Grassroots Arkansas. I also have a statement from Dr. Whitfield. Anyway, the lack of discussion about what happened yesterday is palpable. We, the community of Little Rock, parents, the teachers, especially the students, participated in a successful majority one-day strike yesterday when we shut down education operations in the city for many of the schools. To hear Ms. Zook characterize this as just teachers that don't care about children is appalling. The teachers and the LREA have made their demands clear. This is about restoring democratic rights to the city of Little Rock. And the fact that y'all continue to just make decisions on our behalf is insane. Ms. Zook, how many non-LRE members do you want on this board? This is a union school. If you have 52 members from the buildings, there's going to be 52 LREA members on that board. Are you going to decrease the number then? And this board is part of a plan to decrease their power anyway. It only has advisory power, and it does not have the power of collective bargaining, which is our right. Anyway, I just wanted to echo what the other parents said today, that this is clear. This is clear that y'all are acting without authority, and we want that authority back. Anyway, I'll now read a statement from Dr. Whitfield. As the co-chair of the Grassroots Arkansas and Arkansas Poor People's Campaign, I implore you to reestablish democracy to the LRSD community. We have been told that your actions are lawful, but they are not. They not only appear to be lawless, they appear to be low and lethal. Instead of releasing local control, your actions demonstrate that you are continuing to hold us against our will by the misuse of your limited power. Some people may call this a hostage situation, a form of rape, of slavery by another name. However your actions are described, those of us impacted by it can attest that it is consistently traumatizing. The good news is today you can decide to truly release the LRSD back to local control. Today you can vow to stop violating our human rights and our rights as American taxpayers, and immediately return our formally elected school board to serve us until the 2020 local LRSD board election. Today, you can demonstrate to the students of the LRSD what anti-bullying looks like. Today, you all have the power to set the LRSD community free. My ask is that you treat us the way you would want to be treated if you were being held against your will by people you did not elect. Let us go. I yield the rest of my time.
Molly Humphreys.
Good morning. I believe we're still in the morning time. Molly Humphreys. I'm with the Arkansas Dyslexia Support Group, and I'm here to speak actually on behalf of myself and my experience within the district just this last year. I advocate within the district. I go to a lot of different schools across the district. And the one thing that I've realized working with children within the district to get, receive their right to read and a free and appropriate public education is that every single school in this district is different. There's just not one that is the same. Stevens is different than Chico. Their needs are different. Their strengths are different. And so I want to thank you today for voting that every school receives representation in the PPC, because that is something that the teachers want. It's something that the parents want. And that's the feedback that I'm personally getting. The other thing I want to thank you for today is the grant that we got. I mean, that's huge, y'all. I mean, it's the biggest grant that the federal government has ever given to any state for literacy, and it's because we're doing it right. It's hard, and it's been very difficult over the last couple of years to implement, but we're doing it. And I also go and I travel to districts across the state to advocate for children, and the teachers and the administrators are getting on board. It is difficult, to understand, because you're having to go from this train of thought that we were taught on our university levels to, wait a minute, we've got to do this over here. And it is hard, but they're embracing it. Again, we always say when we know better, we do better. And so I want to thank you, and I want to thank all of you for not choosing convenience over what is right. Giving teachers, every teacher, a voice within the PPC is what is right. And investing in teacher education, investing in the students and their right to read is what is right. It's not easy, but it's what's right. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Dr. Moore, I think you were out of the room when Stacy was giving. Oh, did you hear? Okay, because I wanted you to hear that piece about the pre-K.
I was listening the whole time.
Ms. McAdoo?
I just wanted to, for the record, because I keep hearing, I'm still on the PPC. The CIC, you do not have to be a part of LREA to be on CIC. So just for the record, I needed that to be on there.
Okay, thank you.
You don't.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, and then I'll work with, or Ms. Wendell will work, trying to come up with a time when we can, hopefully before the December meeting, have a work session to flesh out exactly what reconstitution will look like. Thank you all for your time, and be safe going home.
Ms. Zook, could we have, Ms. Zook, could we have a motion to adjourn? Could you give us a motion to adjourn?